In today's video, we're going to be diving deep into a major weather event that's brewing across the eastern and central United States. If you've been following the weather closely, you know that January has already been pretty cold, especially through the first half of the month. But now we're starting to see some more intense cold air making its way across the country. This could be the start of an extended cold period that lasts much longer than we originally anticipated. So we're talking about temperatures that could make January one of the coldest months in recent history. But it's not just about the cold. There's also the potential for some major snowstorms that could hit the East Coast, with some models even suggesting the possibility of blizzards. And I'm not just talking about snow for the usual snowy areas, but snowstorms that could bring winter weather all the way down to the southeast areas that don't usually experience much snow. This could be a really exciting time for snow lovers, especially if the models continue to show this trend. We're also seeing the GFN European models showing eerily similar forecasts, predicting several snowstorms along the East Coast in the coming weeks. Some of these storms could be big, really big, so we need to break down what to expect. Now, before we dive into all of that, I've been thinking about something, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've been including the Climate Prediction Center's outlooks in these videos, covering things like the 6-10-day outlook, 8-14-day outlook, and even the monthly outlooks. Do you guys find this helpful, or would you prefer to skip that part? I've been including these outlooks for a while now, and I think they offer a great preview of what's to come, but I want to make sure I'm focusing on the content you all care about most. So feel free to leave a comment letting me know if you like seeing these outlooks or if you'd prefer I skip them for future videos. But now let's get into the meat of today's forecast. Looking at the 6-10-day temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, we're seeing a significant shift in the weather pattern. Initially, this outlook didn't look too cold, but now we're starting to see temperatures plummeting, especially from January 18th to 22nd. This is when the cold air is really going to settle in, particularly across the central United States. But don't expect this cold to stay confined to just the central states. By January 20th, we're likely going to see this cold air spread eastward, with temperatures dipping below average across much of the eastern U.S. This is looking like a textbook example of a polar vortex event, and we're talking about temperatures that could be historically cold, especially in the north-central U.S. But it's not just about cold air. The combination of colder temperatures and increased moisture in the atmosphere is setting up the perfect conditions for snowfall. The Climate Prediction Center is forecasting above average precipitation, which means we're likely to see more snowstorms, particularly along the East Coast. These storms could start in the Gulf of Mexico, bringing moisture northward, and then they'll move up the East Coast. Coastal areas might see snow, but inland areas could get a much heavier snowfall, so it's going to be a very interesting situation. The big question is how many of these storms will actually materialize. According to the models, we could see 2, 3, or even 4 snowstorms over the next 2 weeks, so snow activity is definitely ramping up. Looking ahead to the 8-14-day outlook covering January 20th to 26th, it looks like the cold air will continue to spread across the east. The northern and central parts of the U.S. will feel the brunt of the cold, but it will likely stretch into the Mid-Atlantic and Great Lakes as well. This extended period of cold weather is expected to bring even more opportunities for snowstorms, especially in the areas that are accustomed to winter weather. The West, on the other hand, will likely stay relatively warmer, which is a bit of a shift from the cold pattern we're seeing in the East. As far as precipitation goes, we're still looking at favorable conditions for snow, though not quite as favorable as the 6-10-day outlook. The models are showing that lows will likely form in the Gulf, bringing moisture northward. These storms may track offshore, but they could still bring significant snowfall to areas along the coast, including the Carolinas, Virginia, and the Mid-Atlantic. So we could see another major snowstorm in the beginning of the 8-14-day period, possibly bringing heavy snow to areas that haven't seen much this winter. As we move even further out into the 3-4 week outlook for January 25th through February 7th, the trend continues. The cold weather will likely persist in the east, especially in the southeast, while the west will remain warmer. The good news for snow lovers is that this cold pattern looks to be sticking around for a while, so we could be in for more snowstorms as we approach the end of January and into early February. For the monthly outlook, the Climate Prediction Center is showing that cold weather will dominate much of the east, with colder than average temperatures extending from the northern plains down through the southeast. The west, on the other hand, looks to stay warmer, which is typical for this time of year. When it comes to precipitation, we're seeing above average precipitation in many parts of the east, which supports the idea of more snowstorms moving through the region. The West Coast, however, will likely remain drier than usual, which is something we've seen for the past few weeks. Looking at recent temperature trends, we're seeing a pattern that's almost identical to what the Climate Prediction Center's January outlook predicted. The Southeast has been colder than usual, with cold air coming down from the northern plains and upper Midwest, while the West has remained warmer. This trend is expected to continue for the foreseeable future, so we're definitely in for a cold stretch in the East. Both the GF and European models are showing that the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic could see a major snowstorm in the coming weeks, with snow extending from Texas all the way up to the Northeast. This storm could be a big one, so we'll be keeping a close eye on it. In fact, by mid-January, both models are showing a storm developing in the Gulf of Mexico, which could bring snow to Texas, Oklahoma, and the surrounding areas. If this storm develops as expected, it could become another major snowstorm for the Southeast. Now, I know this is all a lot to take in, but we're only getting started. As we move into the second half of January, things are about to get even more interesting. We could be looking at significant snowfalls in areas that typically don't see much snow, and the cold temperatures are likely to stick around for a while. So buckle up, because this could be one of the most exciting and snowy stretches of winter we've had in a long time. One thing that I'm watching closely is whether the storm will trend northward. This is a pretty common scenario when dealing with storms like this. Over time, as we get closer to the storm's formation, we see the models adjusting, and they often trend northward. As time goes on, the forecast becomes a little clearer, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. The models are showing a possibility for that northward trend, which means areas that aren't expecting snow might suddenly find themselves in the path of a big snowstorm. So while we can't say for sure just yet where the snow will hit, we're starting to get a good sense of the potential storm track. The storm's development in the Gulf is a key factor here. It's very likely that we'll see some activity forming there in the coming days, but what's uncertain is whether it will stay offshore, come close to the coast, or even move inland. As we get closer to weekend, we'll start to get a better sense of how this storm is going to behave. By Thursday, January 23rd, I think we'll see a lot more clarity on where the storm is headed. That's when we can really start to refine the forecast. The Gulf will likely get more active, and the conditions will be ripe for snowstorms to start popping up across the Southeast. As we look ahead to Sunday, January 26th, this is when things could really get exciting. The cold air from Canada is going to start making its way southward, and when that interacts with the developing system in the Gulf, it could result in some significant snow for the Southeast and even the southern Mid-Atlantic. This is exactly what we look for in a classic winter storm. Cold air pushing in and interacting with moisture from the Gulf. The potential for snow is really high, especially in places like the Carolinas, Georgia, and parts of Virginia. It's still a little early, but we're seeing more and more signs that a big storm could form in that time frame. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the models to see what they're showing. The European and GFS models are both giving us clues about what we might expect, but they do have some differences in how they predict things will unfold. The European model is showing a strong system developing and moving up the coast, while the GFS model is showing a slightly different path with different timing and intensity. Both models agree, however, that the Southeast is likely going to be the main area to watch, so it's clear that snow is definitely on the way, but how much and where exactly it will fall are still up in the air. One of the biggest things we'll be watching in the coming days is how much snow will accumulate. The models are showing some pretty big totals, especially for the Southeast. In Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, we're talking about 10 inches or more snow. But what's really impressive is what we're seeing for places like the Carolinas. We could see anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow, with some models even suggesting totals close to 2 feet. That's huge. And even the southern mid-Atlantic might get in on the action with significant snowfall in places like Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. This is all still in the forecast stages, so these numbers could change. But it's looking like we could see some major snowstorms in the southeast and mid-Atlantic regions. Now let's talk about the temperature patterns, because they're going to play a major role in how this all unfolds. The European model is showing a huge Arctic blast pushing into the east around January 19th. This is the kind of cold air that brings temperatures 30 to 40 degrees below normal. For places that don't normally see that kind of extreme cold, it's going to be quite a shock. We're talking about temperatures so cold that it might seem almost impossible, but this is the kind of Arctic invasion that we need for, snowstorms to develop in the southeast. It's a rare event, but it's something that could happen, and we need to prepare for it. The cold air will stick around for a while, but by January 25th, we'll start to see some warming. The temperature trends will move back toward more neutral readings, but even after the warm-up, temperatures will still be below normal. The deep colds might ease a little, but it won't be entirely gone. And that means we could still have some snow in the forecast as we move into the final days of January. Meanwhile, the GFS model is predicting a slightly less intense cold front. While the temperatures are still going to be below normal, they're not going to be as extreme as what the European model is showing. The GFS is predicting temperatures that are still cold, but not as shocking as the European model. While both models show below normal temperatures, I'm leaning a little more toward the GFS solution here because it seems more realistic, especially when we're looking at those extreme temperature drops in the European model. Either way, it's going to be cold, and we need to watch for how that interacts with the storm systems. As we wrap up the month, we're looking at some exciting developments. I expect there will be at least one, if not two, major snowstorms to track in the coming weeks. The Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, and even the Northeast are all in play for some heavy snowfall, so it's going to be a busy couple of weeks of tracking these systems. I'm really excited to follow this along with all of you, and I'll be sure to keep you updated as things evolve. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do it. You won't want to miss any of the updates, and we'll be tracking these storms in real time as the forecast evolves. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you enjoyed this update, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment below with your thoughts on the storm, and let me know if you're excited for the snow. I'll be back soon with more updates, so stay tuned and I'll see you in the next video.